Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to meet you all again. From Monday to Saturday, I come up with the daily current affairs on StudyIQ IAS English. At 6 p.m., you just have to carefully watch and listen whatever questions are being solved so that you can develop the skill of solving preliminary questions. The explanation is important for both UPSC prelims, mains, and also the interview thereafter. From the perspective of UPSC examination, whatever classes I take here, I also provide the notes on my Telegram channel, Pooja Dwivedi UPSC. If you have any questions regarding this examination, you can talk to me on my Instagram and follow me on my threads. These are the various events that we have to talk about today. First, let's talk about this practice question. Consider the following: papaya mealybug, African apple snail, Cromolina odorata, and Lantana camara. How many of the above have been an example of invasive alien species? Invasive alien species are the ones that are not native to one particular region. They may have been brought from somewhere else for a purpose. But when they start invading the area of native species, they become harmful for the biodiversity of that area. And all these four are actually invasive alien species. All four will be the correct answer. These can be plants, animals, pathogens, and other organisms. I have already told you what does that mean. For example, Lantana camara is an attractive ornamental shrub. That means it looks very beautiful, like an ornament. And it is from the natives, it is a native from the Americas and Africa. Then papaya mealybug. Papaya mealybug is basically a pest. Okay, and it was collected in 1955 in Mexico. It was described as an invasive alien species when it started invading the biodiversity of the Caribbean nations. Then the apple snail, it is an invasive species from South America, as you can look at it. Then if we talk about the Cromolana odorata, it is a small herbaceous plant. It is native to the Americas and it is considered one of the worst territorial invasive species in the old world tropics, as you can see over here. Next question. With respect to the Interconnected Disaster Risk Report 2023, consider the following statements. 78% of wells in Punjab are considered overexploited, and the northwestern region as a whole is predicted to experience critically low groundwater availability by the year 2025. Industrial intensification, that means being more intensified towards building industries and of course using industries, is a major factor pushing towards a groundwater depletion risk tipping point. India is the world's largest user of groundwater, exceeding the use of United States and China combined. That means India exploits more groundwater as compared to the combined groundwater extraction by the United States and China, which is a lot actually. How many of the statements given above is or are correct? Groundwater is the water that is replenished with the help of rainfall below the ground. The water which is stored into aquifers is extracted for usage in areas such as agriculture, industry, domestic. That is why we have water pumps. And when groundwater is not being replenished at the same amount as we are extracting it, we are moving towards groundwater depletion. Punjab is one of the states which actually has reached a point where it exceeds the national average of groundwater extraction. And according to this particular report, Punjab, here 78% of wells are considered overexploited. We know that it is heavily dependent on agricultural activities, and even if we talk about the entire northwestern India, it is also heavily dependent on agricultural activities. That is why we are saying the first statement will be correct. Also, it is not just industrial. For according to this report, it is actually agricultural intensification using of groundwater for staple crops such as rice, wheat. If we use too much groundwater for these, it will lead us to groundwater depletion tipping point. Countries such as Saudi Arabia have already done that. India is moving towards it. So it should be agricultural intensification, not industrial. Second statement is incorrect. India is world's largest user of groundwater and we are extracting more than what China and United States are extracting in combination. So that makes the third statement to be correct. First and third are correct. Second is not. Two only will be the correct answer. This is a new report which has been published by the United Nations University Institute for Environment and Human Security. So remember who publishes it, because sometimes these kind of questions could be asked. This is Interconnected Disaster Risk Report, how different disasters are interconnected in nature. There are 6 environmental tipping points it talks about. First is accelerating extinction, then groundwater depletion, we are talking about this today. Mountain glacier melting, space debris, unbearable heat, and an uninsurable future. That means we do not have any insurance for the future. So groundwater, I have already told you about it. In northwestern states, specifically Punjab and Haryana, we are seeing groundwater depletion at a very exaggerated pace. 20, it also says that 27 of the world's 31 major aquifers store groundwater. They are depleting faster than they can be replenished because of the erratic nature of rainfall. They are not being able to replenish and restock the groundwater, and we are extracting too much. 78% of wells in Punjab are considered overexploited, and I have already told you about this. Saudi Arabia has already surpassed the groundwater risk tipping point. Moving on, I have already told you that usage of groundwater for agricultural purposes. Specifically, if we talk about 40% of the world's crops, they are supported by groundwater only. And even in these, we have the staple crops. That means that we use for our dietary purposes, wheat and rice. India is the world's largest user of groundwater. I have told you about this as well. With respect to India-Qatar relations, consider the following statements. The bilateral trade is valued at $15 billion, and out of it, mostly LNG and LPG exports from Qatar, worth over $13 billion are there. The India Defence Cooperation, India-Qatar Defence Cooperation agreement, which was signed in 2008, was extended for a further 5 years in 2018. So with respect to these statements, we have to see which statement is correct or which statements are correct. See, Qatar recently, the Qatar court has provided death sentence to ex-Indian Navy officers. I have completely made you understand that in detail. You have to be, if you're preparing for the UPSC examination, be a government spokesperson from that perspective, because the charges have not been made public. Please do not delve into conspiracy theories. All right. So yes, the bilateral trade with Qatar, India has with Qatar, it's $15 billion, but most of it is LPG and LNG, that is $13 billion. So yes, this is correct. And when Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, when he visited Qatar for the first time ever by an Indian Prime Minister in 2008, the Indian-Qatar Defence Cooperation Agreement was signed. And in 2018, it was also extended for further 5 years. That means 2023. So both the statements are correct. Both 1 and 2 will be the correct answer. I have already introduced you to the news. And here is the country of Qatar. Okay, moving on. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit in November 2008 was monumental in nature. Then the Qatari Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, he visited in 2015. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also went to Qatar in 2016. Then Dr. Jai Shankar visited Qatar at least 3 times. It was for the first time ever when Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, as a foreign minister, she went to Qatar. This was for the first time ever. Moving on. In 2021, India was among the top 4 export destinations for Qatar. It is also among the top 3 sources of Qatar's imports. And the bilateral trade is this much. I have already told you this. Moving on. The India-Qatar Defence Cooperation Agreement was signed in 2008, extended in 2018 for further 5 years. And this has been told to be by analysts that the defence relationship that India and Qatar have, it is just short of stationing troops. This was so close. And the pact included the training of QENF by India as well as the mutual visits. QENF, Qatar's naval force. Alright. Indian Navy and Coast Guard ships regularly visit Qatar. And the delegations of them, they have participated in 2 maritime exercises last year as well. 2 editions of a joint naval exercise, that is Zair al-Bahr. You have to remember this because prelims can ask us this question. Zair al-Bahr have been held last year. We also agreed that we would celebrate 50 years of diplomatic ties in the year 2023. He was the first Sufi poet of Punjab, inherited the spiritual mantle from Khwaja Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki of Delhi. He settled on the banks of the Satluj, and his village Ajodhan, a few hours' drive from Lahore, came to be called Pakpatan, the ferry of the pure. So, who is being referred to in the above paragraph? We are actually talking about Baba Farid. Let's know about it. Now, recently, Jerusalem has been in the news. So, India has established its presence in Jerusalem in the 12th century. How? As you can see, this is India Hospice, and it was established in 12th century AD, as it says. A plaque was recently also unveiled in which it has said that this is supported by the Ministry of External Affairs. So India is trying to establish historical relationship with Jerusalem, and the road that leads to this hospice is known as Zawiyat el Hunud, that means the Indian corner. Baba Farid was a Sufi saint from Punjab. There is a lore that he has spent 40 days in deep meditation in this place. And Indian Muslims, while they go to Mecca, also started visiting this place only after Baba Farid. A shrine and a hospice for travelers from India was established, as it is believed, by Baba Farid. He was born in 1173 CE. See, we do not support this map because of the ill depiction of India, but we are just going to show you Multan over here. This is not our narrative. This is in Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh are inalienable part of India, will always be. And he was born in Multan. Okay, his family basically traveled from Kabul to now India. One of the first Sufi saints, he was to write his verses in Punjabi, and many of these verses are also enshrined in the Guru Granth Sahib, the holy book of Sikhs. During his travels in Punjab and beyond, he visited Jerusalem. He prayed at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and also composed verses. Alright, so these kind of icon related questions can also be asked. Make sure you know about it. With respect to bigamy and polygamy in India, consider the following statements. According to the Hindu Marriage Act, the child born from a bigamous marriage, that means child born from the second wife, would acquire the same rights as a child from the first marriage under the law. A crucial exception to the bigamy law for Hindus is Goa. According to the National Family Health Survey 5th, that is 2019 to 20, prevalence of polygamy was the highest among Christians, followed by Muslims. So how many of the statements given above is or are not correct? Recently, the Assam government has given a diktat to its government employees and officers that one cannot indulge in second marriage, and if they want to, they have to take the permission of the Assam government. I have already covered this in detail today. Make sure you watch it on StudyIQ IAS English. Okay, but there are certain personal laws which allow for second marriage. Right now, we are talking about different personal laws. So, according to the Hindu Marriage Act, Section 17, bigamy is not allowed. It has outlawed polygamy. But if there is a child that is born out of bigamous marriage, that means to the second wife, then they will have the same right of inheritance as the first child. The first statement is correct. Do you know, even if Goa has uniform civil code, which is very held in nature, there is an exception for Hindu men in Goa. If the wife has not been able to produce an heir or a child by the age of 25, or if she has not been able to produce a male child by the age of 30, then Hindu men can remarry, as in marry any other woman. So this is a crucial exception to the Hindu Marriage Act or Hindu marriage law. Then, according to the National Family Health Survey, it has been found out that amongst Christians, bigamy and polygamy are the most prevalent. That is 2.1%. Then we have Muslims, then Hindus, and thereafter other religions. So first is correct, second is correct, third is also correct. How many are not correct? None are not correct. So no government officer, this is for Assam, employees can indulge in second marriage. A second marriage will not be allowed to be done without the permission of the state government, even if your personal law does allow it, the Shariat for Muslims. Violation of the policy will attract a hefty fine. Also, departmental inquiry will be settled. Also, penalties such as compulsory retirement can also take place. Personal laws and IPC in India both take care of such kind of issues, polygamy, bigamy. Traditionally, we see that polygamy has been practiced in India. The Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 outlawed the practice, and IPC section 494 says that if the spouse of a person is living, they are not allowed to marry somebody else. If they do, then they will attract an imprisonment of up to 7 years or also fine. Then this provision does not apply to a marriage which has been declared as void by the court. That means child marriages. Also, if the partner in the marriage has remained physically absent or we do not know what their whereabouts are, then also this is for 7 years, then also person can marry. So this is an exception. Parliament passed the Hindu Marriage Act in 1955, outlawing the concept of having more than one spouse at a time. This is also applicable to Buddhists, Jains and Sikhs. And the Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act of 1936 already outlawed it. Section 70, and I have already told you about, bigamy is an offense, but a bigamous child will get the same right as the child, the first wife's child. Okay. National Family Health Survey 5 has showed us that there is a prevalence of polygamy, bigamy, 2.1% among Christians, 1.9% among Muslims, 1.3% among Hindus, and 1.6% among other religious groups. And in tribal areas and specifically northeastern areas, it is very prevalent. Which of the following countries has introduced a significant fee for travelers from India and more than 50 African nations as part of efforts to mitigate migration through Central America? That means if one from Asia, specifically India, or these 50 African nations cannot travel directly to the USA under a visa, they will take other routes. And this is generally through Central America. First, they will fly to South America, and then they cross the Darien Gap and entire region of Central America, and then Mexico, and finally USA. So the correct answer is El Salvador. El Salvador has introduced a significant fee for travelers from India and more than 50 African nations. This will amount to at least rupees 83,219, this much amount. And this is in order to mitigate migration to the USA, to achieve the American dream through Central America. Alright, that is why. Individuals who are using passports from India or the designated African countries would be subject to this charge, and this comes in the backdrop of rising detention at the USA-Mexico border, specifically if we talk about undocumented ones from India. Alright, moving on. With reference to the capital expenditure, consider the following statements. The benefit of expenditure extends up to one accounting period. It is incurred on the day-to-day conduct of business. It increases earning capacity of business, and it is a recurring expenditure. We have to see how many of the given above is or are correct. You have to tell me about it in the comment segment. Let me take the names of those students who have answered my last question on DCA correctly. Stay with me for a moment. So yes, Priyadarshan, Mandeep, Shruti. Thank you, Nagesh. Nagesh has also answered it correctly. Yes, Raghuveer, I will upload it soon. Swati, Raghuveer, Pragati, Abhishek, my goodness, Sanjay, Satish, Mindful Shubh, Ritu, Nityanand, Riya Thakur, Irom. Thank you for answering the last question. Answer this one as well. We'll meet you soon again.